We should be beginning in a few minutes. On va débuter probablement dans quelques minutes. Before we begin, I just have a few important preventative measures to share to prevent disruptive and potentially harmful audio feedback incidents that can cause injuries. We remind all in-person participants to keep their earpieces away from all microphones at all times. Not using your earpiece, please place it face down on the middle of the sticker for this purpose that you will find on the table. Avant de commencer, nous avons quelques mesures préventives importantes à communiquer pour prévenir les incidents acoustiques, perturbateurs et potentiellement dangereux. Susceptibles à causer des blessures, nous rappelons à tous les participants de garder leurs oreillettes éloignées de tous les microphones à tout moment. Merci, thank you. Just to advise everyone, we're being told that it might be another approximately 20 minutes before we begin the press conference. Ça va être peut-être un autre 20 minutes avant que la conférence de presse va débuter. Stand by. Merci. Heads up, it looks like we'll be starting in the next couple minutes. On va débuter probablement dans quelques minutes. Merci.
I was like calling in and that it was late, so then I could actually come in person. Are we hearing, what's our ETA?
Any minute.
Any minute? Yeah. Well, my time is great then.
Your timing is impeccable.
No one ever says that about me. So what?
The time window from when it could start to when it will start is quickly shrinking. Yeah, exactly.
Is there anywhere I can fill up a glass of water? No way.
Not really, unfortunately.
If you're not dehydrated, are you really working towards
I was like at the bed with my cat. He's good. He's good. You'll give us a heads up though, right?
Attention broadcasters, we're expecting to start momentarily. Within the next minute or two, stand by.
Recording in progress.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this press conference with the Honorable Patty Hajdu, Minister of Jobs, Families, and Minister responsible for FedNor, who will be holding press conference to provide an update on the labor dispute between the Canadian Union of Public Employees, Flight Attendants, and Air Canada. Merci d'avoir nous joint aujourd'hui avec le ministre Patty Hajdu, ministre de l'Emploi et des Familles, qui tiendra une conférence de presse pour faire une mise à jour concernant le conflit de travail entre les agents de bord du syndicat de la fonction publique et Air Canada. À vous la parole.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you here today on the traditional territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. After 8 months of negotiations and weeks of intensive mediation, Air Canada and the Canadian Union of Public Employees Flight Attendants were unable to reach a tentative agreement. The government firmly believes that the best deals are reached by the parties at the bargaining table, and we will never stop believing that. Le gouvernement croit fermement que la meilleure entente de convention collective se conclut par les parties au moyen de la négociation. Nous ne cesserons jamais de croire en cela. It's not easy, but when parties put in the hard work at the table, Canadians are better off as a result. Ce n'est pas facile, mais quand les parties mettent de l'heure, ce sont les Canadiens qui en gagnent, sortent gagnants. However, in this instance, and despite resolution on a number of key items, this dispute will not be resolved quickly enough. And the impact of the work stoppage at Air Canada that began early this morning is already being felt by travelers. This is causing significant harm and has negative impacts on Canadians and the Canadian economy. It impedes the movement of passengers and critical cargo, such as pharmaceuticals, and it strands thousands of Canadians abroad, making it extremely costly and sometimes impossible to book new flights. Canadians have already sacrificed a lot in this uncertain economy, and this labor disruption is adding to their worries and financial burdens. As Minister of Labour, I have exercised my authorities under Section 107 of the Canadian Labour Code to direct the Canada Industrial Relations Board to order the parties to resume and continue their operations and duties in order to secure industrial peace and protect the interests of Canada, Canadians, and the economy. I've also asked the board to assist the parties in reaching a settlement of the outstanding terms of their collective agreement by imposing final and binding arbitration, and to extend the terms of the existing collective agreement until a new one is determined by the arbitrator. Flight attendants play a critical role in getting Canadians to where they need to go safely, and they deserve to be compensated and treated fairly at all times. My job as Minister of Labour isn't to take sides during labor disputes. It's to give the parties the tools that they need to reach a fair and timely agreement while keeping the best interests of Canadians at heart. And that's why I intervened today. Canada's economy has seen unprecedented attacks on trade and significant tariff actions. Amid these challenges, Canadians have been stepping up for months to support their friends and their neighbours and their local communities. In a year where Canadian businesses and families have faced too much disruption and uncertainty, they shouldn't have to shoulder another blow. We will not leave them behind. This is not a decision that I have taken lightly, but the potential for immediate negative impact on Canadians and our economy is simply too great. Labor disruption impedes the movement of passengers and critical cargo. Canadians rely on air travel every day, and its importance cannot be understated. Many Canadians need to travel to care for loved ones abroad or deal with critical life events, such as funerals or adoptions. The shipments of critical goods, such as pharmaceuticals and organ tissue, should continue to reach their destinations. And we believe that hardworking Canadians who've been saving up for family vacations should be able to enjoy their well-deserved and planned time off. Now is not the time to take risks with our economy. A work stoppage would cause thousands of Canadians to be stranded abroad and across this country, and this is simply unacceptable. Last year, Canadians paid a high price when multiple key sectors went on strike. Inaction at the bargaining table had a massive impact on Canadian families and our entire economy. These parties have had months at the negotiation table. They've had support through the Federal Mediation Service, and they have been unable to cross the finish line. Arbitration is the most stable way to conclude this process for Canadians while allowing parties to reach a deal. If we are going to build the strongest economy in the G7, Canadians need to have confidence in the industries that serve them. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to questions now. One question, one follow-up. We'll start in the room. Jeremy Charon, CTV.
Good morning, Minister, or good afternoon. The government has now stepped in countless labor disputes. There are experts who point to, this having an impact on and advantaging really employers in a negotiation. Is there a concern about undermining the labor system, and are you confident that workers' rights are still being respected?
I think that it's very important to reiterate my first statement, which is that the best deals are arrived at the table, not just because this is good for workers, but because it's good for stability and peace within the organization. Strikes are very disruptive to the culture of the organization. They're very expensive for the members who are often experiencing significant loss of pay, and they're very challenging for the corporations who are losing revenue and reputation every single day. Having said that, in this particular instance, we do believe that it's very important that we establish industrial peace and that we focus on the growing cost to Canadians, Canadian families and Canadian small businesses. So this is a tool that allows for arbitration. There are many items that have been resolved between the two parties, and this will give them an opportunity to resolve the remaining items.
Thank you. And my follow-up is on impacted passengers. Should Air Canada be liable to fully reimburse passengers who've had canceled flights or, paying their full way for a replacement flight?
Listen, I don't want to speculate on the impact to Air Canada and what their corporate practices are. I know they're deeply concerned about the passengers that are stranded around the globe and here in Canada. And last night, and speaking with the parties, in fact, that was one of the first items that the employer raised, was the work they're putting into trying to ensure that whoever is calling into their call centers has some money on the other end. It is important, though, that we keep the safety, security, and financial security of Canadians first and foremost. And it would be my expectation that we all work together to get people home.
Next question will be Kyle Dugan, Canadian Press.
Hi, Minister. Thank you for taking our questions. Can you tell us what changed between yesterday and today that you weren't willing to step in yesterday, but today you've come to the conclusion that clearly something needs to be done? So could you just give us a little bit of insight into your thought process and how you weighed the policy options ahead of before you?
I think what changed between yesterday and today was that I asked the parties to meet with me collectively together in the same meeting. I met with Air Canada and with the union representatives, as well as the national president of CUPE. We talked through what was remaining in terms of the perspectives of the parties. The parties committed to staying at the table throughout the night, which they did. There was an offer tabled by the employer, and the talks broke down. And so it is clear that the parties are no longer, are not any closer to resolving some of the key issues that remain, and they will need help with an arbitrator.
Thank you. And as a follow-up, I'm wondering, how long will it take before things kind of start to return back to normal and some of these flights come back online? Do you have a sense of that, how long the Labour Board process will?
The CIRB is an independent body, and they will review and receive statements from the impacted parties, and then they will make their determination. about whether they will intervene. And so that will take an according amount of time. Don't want to speculate because it is a process, but in general, sometimes it can take 24 to 48 hours for the board to complete that work. Again, that's a question for the board. However, Air Canada said it could take between 5 to 10 days for regular services to resume. And again, I think that's a question for Air Canada in terms of their complex operations that one needs to happen for full resumption of services.
Marina von Stackelberg, CBC.
Hi, Minister. Unions are taking your government to court over your really unprecedented use of Section 107 of the Labour Code, which gives you the unilateral power to essentially, as you're doing today, order striking workers back to work. The unions say this is unconstitutional, that it violates the right to strike. Why does your government continue to use this Section 107?
Well, actually, just recently, I think the CIRB affirmed that in one of the recent disputes, the use of 107 was constitutional. And of course, I know there are a number of pieces of litigation. But listen, in today's decision, this is about industrial peace and the safety of Canadians. Of course, any deal is best if it's arrived at between the parties. But, as we can see, and as as I believe that some of you are reporting on, there are a number of extremely difficult situations and increasingly dire situations that Canadians are facing. And we believe that the Industrial Relations Board will help these two parties conclude their negotiations on some key items.
Experts that I've spoken to about the use of 107 say that the government's repeated use of this is poisoning negotiations because companies believe that they can kind of bargain to an impasse and then the government will step in and prevent a strike from happening. Why did you choose to use 107 so quickly here? I think this is the fastest use of it I've seen. Is your government anti-union?
I absolutely reject the notion that our government is anti-union. In fact, under the previous Liberal government, we considerably strengthened the Canada Labour Code. We banned the use of replacement workers, and we stood side by side with unions in terms of supporting their work, not only in labor negotiations, but also in training and recruiting new members. And so this work will continue. We believe that unions are an essential part of a healthy and growing economy. However, in a case like this, where multiple efforts have been made to conclude an agreement that satisfies both parties, and it is clear that they are at an impasse, it is very clear they need some help in arbitrating the final items.
We're now going to take questions from Zoom. If you have a question on Zoom, please raise your hand. S'il vous plaît, utilisez la fonction main levée pour signaler une question. Okay, our first question is from Tumata Trattori from Radio-Canada. S'il vous plaît, allez-y avec votre question. No.
Okay, so could you just in French, because I'm from Radio-Canada, so how do you explain the use of 107? So could you explain it, but in French?
Je peux essayer. Oui, les deux parties essaient pour beaucoup de mois d'arriver à une entente qui marche pour les deux parties. Mais ça, c'est impossible maintenant et nous devons aider les deux parties avec une autre utile.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup pour l'effort en français. Merci.
Okay, next we'll go to Ian Woods. Ian Wood, please go ahead.
Sure. I'm just wondering what provisions are being taken for Canadian passengers that are overseas and also for non-Canadian nationals that may be traveling with Air Canada that have now been left in place in various foreign countries.
Unfortunately, I don't think I can answer that question, but that is a question for Air Canada. I know Air Canada is working in a variety of different ways to support stranded travelers, but that is a question that I think the employer can answer best.
Okay, so as far as we're concerned here, Global Affairs Canada isn't. Have they been reached out to by people? Do we have any information on, anything that the Foreign Service might be doing?
Well, this is a labor dispute. I mean, I think you're probably recalling a time, I think that we all recall during the pandemic where all airline travel had shut down and there were no options for passengers. That's not the case. There are other options. They're very challenging options, of course, and sometimes there's going to be significant delays, but Air Canada, as I said, is working diligently to try to support its passengers that are currently stranded. There is a very clear guidance from Air Canada to passengers that are outbound to make sure that they check before they arrive at the airport to determine the status of their flight. I would say that would be appropriate. But we will get back to you about whether or not Global Affairs is hearing from Canadians that are reaching out.
Thank you very much.
We don't have any further questions on Zoom. Is there any further questions in the room? Kyle Dugan?
Just in follow-up to what you had said about speaking with the two parties, how do you know that they wouldn't have been able to reach a deal had you allowed this to continue?
The testimony from both parties gave me confidence that they are so far apart on a number of issues that they are going to need some additional help to reach an agreement in those areas.
Could you just give an example or speak to something about the tone, or if there's one particular issue that you could highlight? I'm just looking for some kind of concrete point, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess, I'm not going to negotiate in public on behalf of the parties. It's very important that those conversations happen between the parties. The CIRB is exactly the right place to help them finish. There are a number of items that have been concluded or that have been satisfied. In fact, in a public letter that the union distributed a number of days ago, they indicated as much. But there are some significant differences, and they have been. As I said, the parties worked throughout last night. There was another offer tabled by the employer. It was clear it was unacceptable at that point. The parties are very far apart. And so this additional help of an arbitrator will help them close that gap.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions in the room? Marina von Stackelberg, CBC.
I know that there was a discussion about binding arbitration beforehand, and then you spoke with both the union and Air Canada. I guess I'm curious what changed to have you want to act in this way when you had gone to the union and said, are you interested in this? And the union came back and said, no, we firmly want to go on strike.
I think what changed was the disappointing outcome of last night's talks. I mean, I met with the union and the employer last evening. I asked them to continue to meet throughout the night. The mediators were there assisting the parties. And this morning, the information that I received from the mediators is that the parties were still very far apart on a number of key issues. And it was clear that there was an impasse. An impasse means that, there obviously is a need for additional assistance. And I believe the CIRB is the best place to help them.
And just for clarity, obviously you can continue to negotiate while you're on strike or while you're locked out.
That's absolutely right. And I think that's a great reminder. Thank you. Parties could continue to negotiate, and they could still have the opportunity to come up with an agreement that satisfies the members and the corporation.
So I'm just curious, are they negotiating today at this moment?
My last information was that they were not. My hope is that they will continue to seek a resolution that is jointly arrived at together. Because, as I said in my opening remarks, the best agreement is the one that is found at the table, and not just for members or the corporation, but for the long-term peace and stability of the organization and its relationship with the employees. Listen, I have actually been an employer in a unionized environment previous to politics, and I can tell you that strike activity creates a very challenging environment to resume operations, and every employer needs good and stable relationships with its employees. So I do urge the parties to continue to talk, to continue to speak. There is that opportunity as we speak. It's never too late.
And just quickly, obviously, Canada Post and CUPE are set to return to negotiations this coming week. The previous Labour Minister invoked Section 107 to end a strike that was happening right before Christmas. Again, experts I speak to say that this use of 107 just kind of kicks the can down the road. And here again, once again, we have Canada Post, CUPE in a Labour dispute. Are you concerned that this is what's going to happen here?
Listen, I don't want to make any predictions about what will happen with another collective bargaining process. I think it's really important that Canada Post and the union, CUPE, resume their negotiations after a vote on the last offer that was rejected by their members. Now the organization has a very clear message from the members that indeed the union representation was speaking for the members, and so they have some hard work ahead of them.
Jeremy Charon, CTV.
If you just, I'm hoping you can clarify a bit of a logistical question for me. How long does this extend the collective agreement for, and how quickly do you expect this will get workers back on the job?
So the board will make the determination of the extension of the current collective agreement, and I wouldn't want to speculate. And they will take their appropriate time to determine and respond to my request.
I don't see any further questions in the room. We'll just do one last call on Zoom. If you have a question, please raise your hand now, please. S'il vous plaît, utilisez le lever la main. No, I'm not seeing any further questions. This concludes today's press conference. Thank you very much. Ceci conclut la conférence de presse aujourd'hui. Merci.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister.
Recording stopped.